Now may be the best time to sell. In this episode, I'm going to address the question, when should I sell my real estate and what to do with the money? You'll be blown away with what I'm going to share with you, but it makes common sense. Hi, my name's Doug Andrew, and I've helped many real estate investors determine how and when to buy real estate, how to own it, and how to accumulate the best rate of return on not only the rental income or the appreciation on the properties that they own, but also by what I call double dipping, by having your money liquid, safe, earning predictable rates of return, so that you have the wherewithal to be able to meet the expenses even if the property is vacant. But right now, we live in a very interesting time. At the recording of this video, there are certain states that have seen real estate values appreciate by 20% in one single year. I'm talking about states like Texas, Utah, Idaho, because the supply is far less than the demand, because there's a lot of people that are leaving some of the major metropolitan areas, New York, California, where taxes are going through the roof and they're fed up, and so people are leaving. So what I'm about to share with you could affect you if you own real estate in California or are thinking of buying real estate in California. And I'm going to shed some light upon what is called a rent multiplier and why it may behoove you to liquidate real estate right now in a state like California and reposition that equity or the money that you have tied up there in other properties if you still love real estate and you like being a landlord. If you don't, I'm going to show you where to put the money to earn rates of return equal to or greater than the rental income you've been receiving. And guess what? You wouldn't have to be a landlord anymore, fixing toilets, evicting tenants, taking out the trash. Are you ready to learn? So common sense would tell us, well, the best time to sell a piece of real estate is when it has a high value. Yeah, but generally, if you sell in a market where things are in a high value, real estate has appreciated a lot. If you're going to buy real estate in that same market, you're going to pay a high price for a new property. And a lot of times people want to postpone or defer paying a capital gain tax by doing 1031 exchanges. It looks like President Joe Biden may be doing away with 1031 exchanges, doing away with the step-up in basis on long-term capital gains. We'll see what happens. But I'm going to shed some light on some other considerations because there are many times I've helped people sell high and take the equity and then buy low in other markets in the country, and they have 4 to 5 times the amount of cash flow by doing what I'm talking about. So let's use some examples right now in California. Now, if you haven't noticed, if you understand the California market, or maybe you're watching this video and you're a resident there and you have non-owner occupied rental income properties. So for example, I knew a couple here a few years ago that had built their home to raise their family in. They had 6 children. They bought the home and put in some money into it way back 35 years ago for about $230,000. Do you know how much that house appraised for a few years ago? Just under $5 million. Now, when I met them, they were no longer living in the home, they were renting it. And they were sort of thumping themselves on the chest. Hey, we're renting this home for 10 grand a month. In fact, we think we can raise the rent to $12,000 a month. Now, most people hear that and they go, wow, that's a super investment. You're renting that out for $10,000 a month. Very few cities would allow you to rent a 5-bedroom home for 10 grand a month. Do the math. Okay, $10,000 a month is $120,000 a year. Divide $120,000 a year of rental income into a property appraised for $5 million. That is a pathetic 2.5% annual rate of return. Sometimes people go, I didn't think about it that way. Well, let me show you how out of whack that is. Many times we've had people who have 5-bedroom homes in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they're worth $4 million or $5 million. Sometimes a 2-bedroom home is worth $1.5 million to $2 million. Yeah, location, location, location. But in my opinion, they're way overpriced. But that's been the California market. So I say, you know what? Now may be the time to sell and be able to double, triple, quadruple, maybe 5 times your cash flow. And they go, really? And I go, you know how much a 5-bedroom home that's much newer in a city like Memphis, Tennessee, or Orlando, Florida, the surroundings, the suburbs, is appraised for? No. A 5-bedroom home in Memphis is appraised for about $300,000. You can buy a fairly new 5-bedroom home for $300,000. And the rent multiplier, and they go, wait a minute, what's a rent multiplier? That's how much they can rent it for in ratio to the appraised value. A 5-bedroom home in Memphis will rent sometimes for 1% of the appraised value a month, $3,000 a month. Okay. Now, what does that mean? If that home in the San Francisco Bay Area is really worth $5 million, it ought to be renting for 40 to 50 grand a month. People go, there's no way. Well, then something's awry. Either it's overpriced, or else the cash flow at 2.5% annual rate of return is pretty pathetic, and they sell it. And sometimes they've done 1031 exchanges and gotten a dozen homes or more in Memphis, Tennessee, and they've been able to own a dozen newer homes that now are going to appreciate double and triple in appreciation much easier than a $5 million 5-bedroom home will double in value to $10 million and double again to $20 million. So what they're doing is they're selling high in California, they're buying low in Memphis, but they're renting out for 5 times. They are now turning that cash flow into 5 times the amount of money for the same $5 million. I had a couple that actually sold their home and just paid the capital gain. They just bit the bullet and paid $1.5 million capital gain tax at today's lower rates of 20%. Because they know that Biden is going to be doubling the capital gain rates to 39.6% and doing away with the step-up in basis. So they paid $1.5 million in capital gains on a $5 million home. They took the remaining amount and carved out $800,000 and built a home twice as large in another state for a retirement community. Brand new home. They took the remaining $2.7 million. In a portfolio of laser funds, they are generating $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year tax-free, compared to the $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year of rental income on one 5-bedroom home, and that's before tax. Now, let me connect the dots for you here. So, let's rethink our thinking here. When should you sell your real estate? I would recommend you sell high. Right now in California, I think prices are still holding there a little bit, but it's not going to last for long, in my opinion. I think now is the time in areas like California to sell, even if you have to pay a capital gain tax. Because it sounds like what President Biden has up his sleeve is to raise the capital gain tax from a maximum of 20% up to 39.6%. It's going to double. He wants to probably do away with 1031 exchanges and make people pay a capital gain every time they sell the property. You can't move it over to a like property, is what he is proposing. I don't know if that will pass, but he wants to do away for sure with the step-up in basis as it passes down to children, non-spousal heirs. So folks, it may behoove you to just pay the capital gain tax. And then you can choose, if you like to own real estate, to relocate that money to properties in other areas where it's a bargain. And the rent multiplier is getting up to 1% a month, and you could possibly quadruple or even 5 times your rate of return on the rental income. But many times people say, you know, I'm just tired of being a landlord, fixing those toilets and evicting tenants and taking out the trash. What if I just paid the capital gain and invested it conservatively into your laser funds, Doug. And they're shocked when they see a portfolio of laser funds generate as much or more monthly or annual cash flow, growth, or income totally tax-free that was better than owning the real estate. But they had their blinders on. They thought real estate was the cat's meow until they learned something better. So in answer to the question, when should you sell your real estate? When it's valued at the highest, and when you can see the signs coming that you may be headed for a dip in real estate values. You can purchase real estate in better markets where people are moving to, where real estate will likely appreciate instead of depreciate. And if you're simply tired of being a landlord, hey, just sit back and enjoy the same cash flow or growth by having a portfolio of laser funds. Now, what is a laser fund? Before I share with you what a laser fund is and how it can help you, if this is resonating with you, be sure and share this video. Click like, make a comment, subscribe, click the little bell so you'll be notified every time I post a new YouTube, which I do almost on a daily basis on this channel. But stay with me because I want to gift you a copy of my most recent best-selling book to help you understand this even better. In my book, I give several stories and examples of real estate investors who double dip. They own real estate, but they don't always simply pay cash. They will finance properties. They'll keep the equity out in their laser funds for liquidity and safety. And they've been earning rates of return averaging 9% like I have. And I'm talking about net cash-on-cash rates of return. Tax-free. They're earning 9% on every $1 million. That's 90 grand a year. And on the mortgage, they're only paying a net of 3% because they're borrowing money at 4.5%, let's say, which is tax deductible. In a 33% bracket, they're only paying 3%. They're making 90,000 on every $1 million. They're only paying 30,000. This is how money works. This is how I manage and own real estate and keep my money liquid, safe, earning predictable rates of return. But let's say you just want to take the money out of your real estate, pay the capital gain, bite the bullet, do it. And what can this do? I had a gentleman that had 2 apartment complexes after doing 1031 exchanges for years, and they were worth about $4.5 million. He'd been working his entire life to pay them off. And he decided he didn't want to be a landlord anymore. He had a stroke. He turned it over to a property manager. They embezzled a bunch of money. I finally convinced him to sell, and he got cold feet. He goes, "This is my kid's inheritance." I go, "Really?" We brought his 6 children into the office, and I said, "I want you to shoot straight with your father. What are you going to do with these 2 apartment complexes when he's 6 feet under?" They said, "Dad, we don't want to hurt your feelings, but we hate these apartment complexes. On the way home from the funeral, they're going up for sale." I said, "Why do you want to leave behind some apartments your kids don't want anyway?" If you sell, you take the net after tax and put it into a portfolio of laser funds. We showed him his cash flow. It was $250,000 a year, just conservatively tax-free. He goes, "What? This is way more than I've been able to earn after tax on my rental income, and I don't have to be a landlord anymore. What am I going to do with my time?" I said, "You're going to enjoy it. And when you do die, kids, would you like the apartments or would you like to get $6.5 million tax-free within 3 weeks after your father passes away?" What do you think they said? "We'll take the $6.5 million. Where did that come from? The laser fund. See, it's a maximum funded insurance contract where you're taking the money. If you sell real estate, you're putting it in there and you're earning rates of return, averaging 6, 8, 9%. This is net cash on cash. I have earned some years as much as 25%. Many real estate investors use this as their working capital account to manage their real estate. But at the end of the day, every $1 million in a laser fund or a portfolio of laser funds can generate, 80, 90, 100,000 a year of tax-free income. So if you have 2 or 3 million, that's quite a bit of money. And as you do that, when you ultimately die, whatever is in there blossoms. It turns into a tax-free transfer under Section 101A of the Internal Revenue Code. Real estate doesn't do that anymore, especially if Biden does away with the step-up in basis. So why would you generate this much cash flow renting real estate when you could generate more, or at least the same amount tax-free? Why would you leave behind when you die this much in real estate when you could leave behind this much totally tax-free using the laser fund? If this is intriguing you, go to laserfund.com, L-A-S-E-R fund.com, or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling, and I'll cover the rest of that cost, but I'll pay for the book. It's 2 books in one. This one is 200 pages with all the charts and graphs and explanations. If you're into stories, you'll learn how real estate investors use the laser fund for the liquid side fund, okay? And so you flip the book over and you can read 62 different stories. This will empower you, and if you like to listen and learn, watch and learn, there's other mediums there that will help you get empowered and educated. My advice is to consider carefully, what is real estate doing in your area? Is it time to sell? What should you do with the money? Do you want to buy additional real estate? I would actually finance it and keep the money liquid and safe into a portfolio of laser funds, whether you buy more properties or not. And you will be blown away with the examples in this book on how much better off you will be.